This is Shelf Space. I'm back at the brewery, and this time I'm joined by Joshua Counsil from Good Robot Brewing Company in Halifax, Nova Scotia, to explore how founder-led content, high-stakes branding, and resilient support networks are reshaping the CPG landscape. From the evolution of the non-alc category to candy revolution, this conversation dives deep into the strategies that help emerging brands scale and turn routine consumption into meaningful experiences. And before I hit the go button here, I want to say thank you again to our Shelf Space partners: TD Business Banking, Fasken Law, Pacific Coast Distribution, Picnic Creative, Benchmark 60, and REMA. Okay, here's my conversation with Joshua. Josh, this is about as much of a blind date as I think we could have set up. It's great to be connected, great to be talking with you, and we'll kick things off with the big question and a pint. Thanks for raising a pint. I'm really curious to know, if you could see one innovation in the grocery store, what would that innovation be?
I really like what's happening with candy right now. I met the regional Cadbury sales rep at a food executive something or other event, and there's so much fun collaboration going on in candy. It's somewhat out of control. You get a Reese's Puff cereal that's made with Oreo cookies and stuffed with Snickers, and then there's a theme park ride made after it. And for impulsive marketers, dream types like me, it's heaven, but it's usually the sign of a bit of a decline of the category. Right? And he said, yeah, candy is struggling right now. So I'm really enjoying, as somebody who struggles with sweets, I really like that they're moving into kind of the protein space and the fiber space, and you're actually getting some actually good tasting breakfast cereals and candy bars and whatnot that are at least 10 grams of fiber or whatnot. So I'm enjoying this kind of indulgence / weight management that's going on. It's getting better and better all the time taste-wise. So I'm excited to see what's next there.
I love it. Yeah, that's a good one. And I think the candy aisle is exciting, especially, given that low sugar options are now not tasting like you've licked a bowling shoe. Monk fruit has evolved a little bit, so it's not quite as tragic. And of course, brands like protein candy are, they're packing it in. And actually, there was another candy gummy brand that they were, really championing fiber. I didn't quite catch that call out before destroying an entire bag and then looking at the back and going, oh, I just ate like 3 days of fiber all in 20 minutes. So I guess there's good and bad.
Your bedroom must have been a treat that night. There's a kid here regionally, smart guy, who has a company called Swole Gummies, I think it is. Don't quote me on that. And it's protein gummies, and they're really good. And he's just grown it out of his garage with a really good formula. And I don't know where he got it from, but he knows everything about consumer packaged goods that has taken me 11 years to learn, and then some. So I love what's happening in that category. Lots of innovators, and fundamentally you're making a fun product still. Non-alcohol is going that way too, right? I mean, 10 years ago it was atrociously bad. And now you can actually get, a Guinness Zero or non-alcoholic wine spritzer that's actually pretty tasty.
Yeah, I think that food, that innovation in the recipes, in the type of ingredients that got used, where those ingredients come from, I think the aisles are changing a lot. Let's go back for a moment to this. You just mentioned your garage founder. I know you had a very much a grassroots, pull your bootstraps up, blood, sweat, and tears start. But a lot of food entrepreneurs now, they get told, and I've been to all the industry events, I've been in the round tables, in the workshops, there's a lot of doomsday, like if you don't know your P&L, if you don't have this locked up, if you don't have all the capital in the world, like you're not going anywhere. And from your perspective, what's the entrepreneurial landscape right now? Does it feel like entrepreneurs are being resourced and supported and championed, or are they being beat down?
I would say it's tough, but humans are tough. And entrepreneurs seem to be not only tolerant of pain, but they're sort of like Hellraiser, Pinhead. They just lavish the pain. They say, oh, it's awful. And then they go do something even more challenging that pushes themselves. I think there's a lot of support out there that is poorly marketed through no fault of the organizations, the government, the investors or whatnot. The resources that are there, entrepreneurs sometimes don't know the gatekeeping language, how to find them. So I've been having chats with CFIN, for example. Do you know CFIN?
Yeah.
Canadian Food Innovation Network, for anyone listening at home. They're looking to do some new programming next year. They're an online forum. They're great for resourcing. And they're kind of seeing, calling around saying, what do food and beverage entrepreneurs need? And what the guy told me was they all think they need capital. They all think they need money and other types of resources. But all that stuff is out there, the training and the money, but they just don't know where to look. So I think the support is there, but the analogy might be when you're having a really rough period, you've probably got a support network, whether it's coworkers or family or friends or a neighbor or even books, something that makes you feel not so alone. And when you're in those moments, you don't necessarily think to turn to those things. And I think that's a lot of what I'm seeing is it's a challenging market out there. Entrepreneurs need support. It exists. They don't know where to look.
And when you were starting the brewery years back in Halifax, I know that, and I've heard stories in the ether about how your guys' efforts on organic growth and about just sort of appealing to consumers and engaging not only your physical community, but your digital online community. When you look to that experience and then look ahead, what do you think the landscape is like for entrepreneurs that want to grow that way? They know that they need to, they know that it's probably the only option for them, but they feel stuck and they see everyone with their, their little fuzzy microphones doing selfies, talking about, I wish they clipped it on. They hold it like it's like a drunk Bob Barker. Anyway, what do you think it's like for emerging entrepreneurs and emerging founders that are trying to build that groundswell of support, but it just feels like an uphill battle for them?
For what it's worth, somebody out there needs to make an AI-generated drunk Bob Barker. Please send it to me in Corwin. I really want to see that now. And the founder-led content piece is really interesting. Just yesterday, Dr. James Richardson, who might be nodding along, of course, he's one of my favorite personas. He's a brilliant curmudgeon, and he cuts through the treacle, if you will. He is an anthropologist turned CPG marketer, and he takes consumer packaged goods, purchasing behavior and human behavior all the way back to tribal instincts in a fascinating way, even grocery departments being byproducts of survival needs. And his book, Ramping Your Brand, has some great stuff in there. If you're starting a brand now, food and beverage, CPG, doesn't matter, it's a must-read book. And his LinkedIn feed is always full of just a delicious level of bitterness. And I really like that because you need it as that flavor profile. The space is often overly optimistic, and it's nice to have somebody who balances out a bit. And he posted something that was so appropriate based on conversations we've had this week on founder-led content, which is it works for something like Dr. Squatch, where the founder is the consumer. And it works for, in our early days, when we were a brewery first with a brew pub. You're in my old living room, by the way, that we converted into a bar. It's called the Mousetrap, but this is me and Angus and Doug, the three founders, old living room. And it was T-bar ceilings and whatnot that we carved out and turned into kind of a speakeasy, and lived here for 4 years when we operated the brewery. But I am a beer drinking consumer, and we were our customers when we opened. So the founder-led content really worked for us. But what he said that is so potent is if you're a middle-aged, overweight dude and you're making a herbal product or whatever, hire someone. It's really speaking to me specifically. Hire someone attractive. Hire someone who's very charismatic. In my case, it works for my category of beer. But I'm the wrong guy to be the face of our non-alcoholic beer, for example. That's completely inauthentic because I don't like non-alcoholic beer. I'm not that consumer. I think it's foul. I think the one we make is quite good for the category and is competing very well against Corona Zero and Guinness Zero and whatnot. But it's not me, so it shouldn't be my face. So I'd say, just like anything with social media, the salience feels overwhelming. It seems like everybody's doing it. And then you actually do the numbers and you're like, oh, it's really about 30 people who regularly appear on my feed. And there's probably 8,000 entrepreneurs in my region alone in food and beverage. So it's not everyone's doing it. Don't feel pressured to do it unless you enjoy doing it like I do. And maybe if you are the consumer and people can see themselves in the founder.
Yeah. And it leaks out of you, all of your branding and marketing mojo. It always oozes out of what you share and the way you're talking. We'll get back to the conversation in a second, but I want to take a moment to give a shout out to this episode's sponsor, TD Business Banking. You know as well as I do that the consumer goods industry isn't just about making great product. It's about managing margins, navigating supply chains, and finding partners who actually get it. There's nothing worse than using some CPG lingo only to have your banker look at you like you have 3 heads. That's why I point founders and food leaders towards TD. They've dedicated themselves to the food and beverage sector with local relationship managers who partner with you to understand the hurdles that you face every day. Whether you're financing working capital, building and equipment purchases, or just want a banking partner who picks up what you're putting down, TD has the advice and expertise to help you grow your business. They aren't just bankers. They're a vital part of our industry ecosystem, and I'm proud to have them as a partner. Now let's get back to the show. Based on the number of ventures and projects I'm involved with, I'm always engaged in naming exercises. And as an agency, a naming exercise is the worst deliverable you can ever bring to a client because it is the hardest thing to bring to the finish line. But when you guys went through your Good Robot Brewing name, what was that experience like? And I just imagine there's so many leaders, whether they're entrepreneurs or they work inside of a large food company, that they're naming things, but naming is so tricky. So what was it like for you guys to get behind we're going to name it and we're going to own it and we're going to rock it for as long as we have?
Still struggling today. Are you talking about naming conventions, like naming a SKU or a company?
Yeah, exactly.
It's one of those things where if you write it on paper, it seems very simple, but in practice, people get excited. And the conversation today was about the culinary side of our company. So we have 3 hospitality venues. Then we've got our wholesale beer, tequila sodas, and other beverages we make that are sold across Canada. And then we've got a B2B beverage co-packing facility where we make other people's products. So right now I'm talking about the tourism hospitality side. The culinary team is doing a promo right now to celebrate the launch of Diablo, which is our #1 beer. It's a Mexican lager with lime and jalapeno. And we did 2 offshoot tequila products with lime and jalapeno in them. And we're having kind of this devilish menu for May. And the culinary team loves being creative. Most of their job is just following the process. So when people get a chance to play, they really want to. And they like naming things, cute names, quirky names, fun names. You know, the fish sandwich at the bar is called the Haddock Hogan, what have you. The chicken sandwich is called the Cluck Norris. The problem with it is that that's okay when you're at a bar and you have a bartender to explain what it is to you. What we learned the hard way from scaling from a bar to packaging is that on shelf, you don't have that bartender. And the packaging very, very quickly has to clearly say what this is, what are the most important attributes about it, who it's for, and so on and so forth. So there's no opportunity to be quirky with the name. It needs to immediately identify what that thing is. So we didn't give those food samples today fun names. We said, this is a Nashville hot chicken, and this is a mole chicken wrap or whatever it was. Good Robot is an example of that. We were wrought iron brewing. We were incorporated, still are. And a branding agency, Breakhouse, who designed this room that we're in, the Mousetrap, they said, we can't in good conscience let you get away with opening your bar and opening your brewery and being called Wrought Iron Brewing Company. It's very stoic. It's hyper masculine. It's very old world. And nothing about you 3 dweebs says that. You're more like Mr. Bean. You're former engineers who are comedians. You're drunk robots is what they called us. And that's what they wanted to rebrand us as. And I loved drunk robot. But as a controlled substance, there's certain things you can do and can't do. And so after a couple of beers, we thought, why not just Good Robot, which we felt encapsulates some of the pieces about humanity that are good and that kind of add a playful spin on robots. Good Robot is completely meaningless as an asset. It has nothing to do with beer. People at first thought it was an electronics store or like a computer store or something. And so it takes a long time for something that a meaningless, distinctive asset like Good Robot to accumulate enough brand awareness to where they associate Good Robot with beer. And if you're not going to spend that energy and resourcing on associating the golden arches with French fries, then for most businesses who aren't looking to scale, I'd recommend starting with something very functional. I love my physiotherapist's business name. It's just called Young Kempt Physiotherapy. and it's at Yonge and Kempt, which are the two roads that intersect. That's the kind of level of functionality you need. And
that works until their lease comes due and they have to move 2 blocks over.
Which happened. They had to move. But, at first it's a very functional thing. And if you're only looking to have a single location, that's a great name for a business. So I'd say that the creativity piece, you got to be very careful with as somebody who loves creative ideas. If it's not clear, then it's not doing its job.
When you walk down the grocery aisle, you picked on non-alc, so I'm going to pick on you for picking on non-alc. Obviously, the grocery stores, it's a growing category. We're seeing it on like aisle number 4. They've got their these are the main categories in this aisle. You are seeing non-alc listed on these aisle signage hanging above each row. It is a category that's here to stay. It grows and shrinks depending on if it works for those shoppers in those areas. It feels like there's a lot of mystery still on where it's going to land. However, it has been incrementally growing. When you guys now are into non-alc, are you making decisions in non-alc based on data? Are you making it off gut? Obviously not your gut because you hate it, but what are you using to make the decisions around your non-alc play?
We're in a unique position where we're a controlled substance in Canada. So because we make beverage alcohol, sometimes we get told what to do. We have, in the case of Nova Scotia, not every market's like that, but most Canadian provinces are like this. We have a crown corporation. For any people outside of Canada who are wondering what that is, it's run like a corporation, so it has a profit and loss. The profits go towards the public. So it's kind of a weird, almost government corporation, and it has an onus to serve the public. They are your basically primary dominant purchaser and distributor of your product. And sometimes they say things like, we're going to launch our first non-alcoholic section, and based on the performance of your other SKUs, we want you to be one of the initial 16 SKUs that gets prioritized here. So we're in a unique category in that way of sometimes we just get told, hey, you should probably be doing this. But for other folks, innovation is so interesting. Sometimes you could do all the research in the world and come up with something that people will want, the consumer does want, but the buyer doesn't, the distributor, the grocery store, the liquor corporation. And we've seen that happen in the past where we have tested tons of products that did extremely well in our bars. So we knew the product was tasting great, did really well on e-commerce. So we knew there was pull there as well. And maybe they became our number 2 and number 3 in-house seller that year. And wholesale wanted nothing to do with it. It didn't align with what their insights showed. So it kind of goes beyond just doing consumer insights or going from your gut, because there's that third party who is fundamentally distributing the product for you. And guess what? Their opinion matters very much.
Yeah, I was talking with a category buyer for non-alc, and she was like, yeah, we're just coming through review, and I'm losing 2 facings, and I have 79 brands that want in, and I can't even keep the ones that I already know and love working with. So, competition is stiff. And then, of course, primary goal in wholesale is to make that category buyer happy, make their life easier, help them make more money. And that can be difficult to do. So when I hear entrepreneurs in the beverage space, really any category, when they feel like they're being beat down and that they're not getting their shot, there are so many forces at play. Just like how a great musician, might never be famous, but they might just be really amazing. Sometimes they're just amazing, and there's other factors that they just can't overcome. And it isn't about their talent. It's not a lack of talent.
No, totally. I remember asking my guitar teacher, Jerry Latour, if for some reason you're out there, fire me an email. I thought he was the most amazing guitar player I'd ever met. And when I was 13 or 14, after 3 or 4 years of lessons with him, I just was like, how come you're not famous and touring in a band or whatnot? And I remember he just sighed. It has so much more to do than just technical talent. There's a lot of luck. And I know a lot of brilliantly smart people who are very unsuccessful. And successful, I should say, that's very condescending the way I just said that. But I think you know what I mean. With respect to growing a business or a product, we'll keep the definition there. I know so many people who are so much smarter, so much better looking, so much, better qualified on paper to be doing what we're doing. And a lot of it comes down to luck, network, and just brute force, just ability to keep pushing and tolerate the pain and be a 6 out of 10 in intelligence, but 9 out of 10 with survival.
Yeah, survival's key. But you talked about timing there. And one of the things I feel like I'm coming across more and more lately is where someone will make something great because they can make it, not because they have identified a need in the market, a gap that they can fill, that they're just, their capabilities are there, their talents, their interests, there's all these other things that line up for them. But ultimately there aren't people or opportunities waiting for them. And so they're kind of coming at it, I feel like the world owes them something because they've made something. And it's like, yeah, but in business, you've got to find that gap. You got to find that need or want that's unfulfilled. And then you have to work hard to meet that. And sometimes I just worry that their timing is off, and partly too that they've got blinders on.
Operator thinking. I can make this, therefore I should. Look what I can do that nobody else can do. And also, the other one I see with respect to this is, I saw this really cool thing in Los Angeles. It's, a beer with cricket protein in it. It also makes babies speak 5 languages after age 3. And you go, well, that sounds incredible for Los Angeles. LA is such a proving ground for CPG. And then it moves one state over into Utah and it fails. And Atlantic Canada is a much more conservative market with respect to taste. So people see something that works in Toronto, or they see something that works in LA or Miami, and they go, that'll work here. And there's an ignorance of who the consumer is and what the consumer wants. And we all get caught up in our own ego of going, I like it, therefore people will like it. And what you really should have done is just gone, you know what? I really like big IPAs, but there's lots of competition in that market. And it's really not our strength. We're going to stay in our lane, and as Josh, I'm going to go spend my money for fun at the places that make a big IPA because I'm that consumer. But it's not what I'm going to make for our customers, because that's not the route we're trying to go.
Let's put your boss man hat on for a moment here. Tell me about how big is your team? And it sounds like the rumor is that you've got a really great retention rate with your team. And I bet you there's a lot of entrepreneurs and business leaders out there that would love to know if there's any secret sauce to it. What's it been like to grow and maintain a fantastic team?
Oh, scaling culture is so hard. One of the hardest things about scaling. I happened to be having a beer last night. I didn't even recognize it was the premier of Nova Scotia. He came up at an agriculture conference and had a beer with me and started asking questions. And he looked at my name badge and said, hello, Josh. And I grabbed his suit looking for his. And he laughed thinking I was joking. And it's really just I'm an idiot. And I couldn't recognize him for about 5 minutes until, oh, wow, that's the premier. And we were talking about exactly that. It was just a long conversation about what works and what doesn't. So for context, our company 5 years ago was a single brew pub location that was very popular with about 20, 25 employees and about $2.5 million in revenue. And it is now over 10 million in revenue. And depending on the season, about 55 to 85 or so employees. A lot of seasonal, because whether we're making beer, energy drinks, doesn't matter. For wholesale, hospitality, and the B2B co-packing, the summer season is your haymaking season. It's big volume. So that team fluctuates quite a bit. What the premier said that was relevant to scaling business or making changes to legislation was, he said, the 2 things I've learned is that people hate the way things are, and they're really going to hate you if you change them. So people are so adverse to change mentally, even though our entire existence is nothing but. And when you scale and when things change, there's always going to be people who aren't on board with that. And it's not your fault and it's not their fault. Sometimes it just gets to a place where it's no longer recognizable to them. And I get it, because our company has gotten to a place where often I don't recognize it. And there's tons of parts that frustrate me too. So I think with scaling culture is so challenging, and you need folks who are okay with it You need cheerleaders to bring the rest of them on. They don't necessarily need senior leaders, but there always seems to be one cheerleader on every team who's really good at like pulling the rest, and getting their help to pull is advantageous. And something I've learned from my psychologist, Dr. Conrad, about change and scaling and retention is that there are 3 prerequisites to change, whether with an individual or with an organization. The first is an external change. So as a food and beverage company, for example, you get into a new market, or COVID happens, or tariffs happen. So it's usually an external change that's out of your control. That kind of puts us into a state of change. And we saw this happen with the whole world during COVID. Everybody was in a state of change, and suddenly people were switching careers or deciding to break up or have children or whatnot. The second prerequisite for change is a support system to make people not feel alone with the changes that are going on. Support systems are usually with an organization that's scaling, good processes, or in the absence of that, really good managers and good access for those managers to the CEO or foundership or whatever it is, so that people have a level of relatedness and they don't feel alone. And maybe you're investing in them in other ways, because support could be a book. Support could be a treat. It could be a weekly happy hour. It comes in many forms. The third thing that is out of an organization's control or a leader's control within their team is the individual's desire or propensity to change. That part is up to the individual. And there's lots of brilliant philosophers and scientists who argue whether or not that is something you can self-control. That part, there's just going to be some people who just don't want it. And it's sad and then hard to say goodbye, but sometimes you have to folks like that. And again, just remember that it's not their fault and it's not yours. An organization changes and it's not what it was, and this person wanted what it was, and it's not. And support them on their way out. But find the people who are craving that growth, who are craving that change, because they'll help pull the rest.
And your journey to this point, it would have come up because of a lot of partnerships, a lot of great support. You talked about a support network. Sometimes that was personal, sometimes it's professional. What's it been like on sort of that ring, that sphere of influence around you, that you feel like you've had the right mix of supports to help you and your team get to where you are now?
For any founder or entrepreneur or whomever out there who feels alone, you're not alone with that feeling. It's a very lonely place to be when you're driving the change and then you're going, oh my God, what have I done? And you're losing sleep in the middle of the night, waking up at 2 a.m. and going, oh God. And that happened to me today. You know, I woke up 2 a.m., brain was in a change mode. I had a key person leave this week and I'm about to go on vacation, and woke up at 2 and my brain's just like, we need to fix this now. So you're not alone with that sentiment. There's so many people like that exist at organizations like EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, or Wallace McCain Institute, which is the Atlantic equivalent of that I'm a member of and my founders are members of. There's Tech, there's YPO, Young Professionals Organization, I think it stands for. And those are all people who are in the same position, who are professionally doing what you're doing. It's great to have friends or a romantic partner or parents or whomever as a loving, supporting relationship, but sometimes you also need somebody around who can challenge you. And it's not always your employees or your friends, because they see the stress you're going through and they don't want to push you. They don't want to call you on your bullshit. So organizations like that are great for both a combination of support and challenge. So I'd say your friends, your family, don't forget to spend time with them. Don't end up at your business, or at least for me. Everyone's different, right? Some people could just crush. I'm not that guy, but don't spend 7 days a week, 1 million hours a day at it, and completely allow your friends and loved ones to fall off unless it's with intent. But I see it happen accidentally so much that I'd say most don't want that. Some are incredible at it and they just make that sacrifice and they're fine. And then I'd also say, for me personally, I'm a very academic guy. I love to learn. And when you are the person driving the change, there's nobody above you to learn from. So having books, audiobooks, podcasts like this, other professionals, a mentor, whatever it is, who you can actually learn tactile info from, that's a wonderful way to not only not feel alone, but have some useful stuff that you can apply to what's currently going on.
That's so true. All right, last question. It's the really big one. Favorite grocery shopping experience ever, anywhere in the world? Where was it?
Oh, boy. Oh, so many come to mind. I went to Vietnam in November. There wasn't what we would call a grocery store in North America, the big mega stores with a million brands competing for shelf space. Everything was so fresh and super fun. It was a bit scary. And I loved that experience of not knowing what you're about to consume and taking that gamble. Lausanne, Switzerland. I saw my friend Megan there, and I liked Lausanne shopping or France shopping because there was niche stores for each food you were buying. You went to the cheese store for the cheese. You went to the meat store for the meat, the bread for the bread. And if you tried to go to the bread store and get the cheese, even though the bread store had cheese, the person you were with was like, no, you're not going to that store for that cheese. You go to the cheese store for the cheese. And you're like, okay. It's kind of like bar hopping your way home from work. You stop at like 5 or 6 different shops. You might stop, have a glass of wine and there's so much neat stuff to look at. It's super, super fun. And then, of course, I would say the most lavish, over-the-top, ridiculous stuff in the States. The idea of Trader Joe's as a concept of making grocery shopping fun. I love that stuff. Americans are so good at innovating in that regard and just taking something that is normally a chore and turning it into a fun experience. Every store should have a water slide. Every store should have fun sampling activities. It should have live music and open bars and whatnot. Especially in my category, one thing I don't see in Canada really is a really fun liquor store. But liquor is a fun product. I don't understand it. It needs a water slide. I never understood why buying theme park tickets online isn't as fun as going to the theme park. The purchasing process should be fun, and I think there's some places in the States that are doing it awesome. And then just for old world simplicity, or places that haven't been saturated with CPG, going to the niche thing for the niche good is just a real treat.
Yeah, I was going to pull a Jerry Maguire on you. I was going to say, shut up. You had me at Cheese Shop.
Yeah.
Josh, thanks for doing this. Thanks for joining me on Shelf Space. It's great to be connected, and I'm looking forward to when we can actually be together in person.
Absolutely. If your listeners are ever in Halifax, Nova Scotia, give us a ring and we'll have a pint.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Shelf Space. If you like what you hear, I would be eternally grateful for a 5-star rating and a quick share on social. Your support means the world to me and our partners, TD, Fasken, Rima, Pacific Coast Distribution, Picnic Creative, and Benchmark 60. For bonus content and resources from our sponsors, go to shelfspacepodcast.com. I'm Corbin Hebert. I'm glad we're on this rocket ship together. I'll see you in the future.